Shanti. So now you're not going to talk for rest of today, all of tomorrow, all of the next day, and half of the next day. Is that okay? And if you have to, you have to, but otherwise don't. But the main attention is on the mind, silence of the mind. If you just stop talking, but all the rest is going on, you might as well talk, because it doesn't really do any good. But the exercise of stopping talking is useful because then you become more aware of the internal chatter. And there are many different levels of it. And as you go into silence, you make contact with other levels of noise that goes on. And there may be not just verbal noise going on in your mind, but feelings. To bring quiet into your feelings is actually a very good thing. When it becomes too much, you just sit with it. Like they say, if you have pain, you have to sit with your pain. And the idea is not to be perfect or something like that, because this is just between me and myself. To know what's happening and to discover things that are usually below the radar, that we just don't know about. So the idea is to get in contact with those and process them, be with them, sit with them, and allow them to subside. There is a famous saying in the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, which says that all things arise, persist for a while, and then they subside. All things. It's like a law, a spiritual law. And when you allow the things to arise and endure them persisting for a while, and they do subside and you let them go, that's very different from suppressing them. Otherwise, people very often will suppress things. But I wanted to read you something that I wrote for just this opening part. So going into silence. Silence of the body is visible and tangible. And with the added COVID-19 rules of social distance, taking meals alone, no small talk, I am with myself, I am with my thoughts. Silence of the mind does not mean to stop thinking. As long as we are spiritual beings acting through physical forms, we are in motion physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially. Given that the original dharma of the soul is peace, love, inner power, purity, and bliss, silence means that my thoughts correspond to these quintessential qualities of the soul. So you are thinking, but it's the quality of thoughts that counts. The mind is a hungry butterfly, going from one association to another, touching different flowers of feelings, perceptions, memories, emotions, nostalgia. The mind is not as free as we would like. The mind and heart are pulled by karmic connections, hopes, desires, and fears. It is said, by conquering the mind, you conquer Maya. Maya means negativity, temptation, illusion, delusion, this type of thing. You conquer Maya and you become the master of your world. Your world is your inner world and the concentric circles of your outer world. It is not a conquest through violence, repression, suppression, and discipline, but something different. Become a friend of your mind. In the Bhagavad Gita, it says, the soul is its own best friend and its own worst enemy. You probably heard that a lot, but you probably didn't know it came from the Gita. But it's very, very ancient truth. Up to us, if we really know, I think those thoughts that I choose to think. So if I choose to make myself crazy, then I can just as easily choose to not. It's all about what thoughts we entertain. It's not about what thoughts arise. Anything can come up, but do you entertain them or not? Your mind is your heart, the core of your being. Conquer your heart through love, through being real, and through the courage to be who you truly are. You know, we are trained to be something other than what we are. You have to be like this, you can't be like that, da 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 da. You lose contact with who you are like that. Silence, then, is alignment, harmonizing the mind, having come to terms with your past, your present, and the future. You reach dispassion, compassion regarding people, places, and things. Silence means that you are free. These are few thoughts about silence. And going into silence is a gentle process. If you go in diving, deep sea diving, you have to go gently, because as you go down, pressure increases. And you go to a different world, corals and all fishes and this type of thing. And when you go into silence, you're going closer to your subconscious, which is symbolized by water always. And when you go down gently, slowly, you may find certain things happen which drastically force you to the surface again, and it's irritating, because then you have to again slowly go back down again. So we also need to be patient when we practice silence. And the mind is going all over the place most of the time. So you will plan to be silent and imagine that you are being silent, and then after a while you find that you're not. There's so much stuff going on. And you notice, so when you notice that you're not where you intended to be, then you gently bring your mind to where you intend to be. And it runs a lot, but you don't notice for a while. And as you get more practiced, you notice more quickly, and you catch it, and you have to give the mind food, because the mind is hungry butterfly. So it's very important to be creative with silence. And this is why writing is good. In many ways, it's a discipline of the intellect as well as the mind, because you need to give yourself worthwhile, meaningful things to think about. Because if the mind is not given something interesting to do, it'll go somewhere else and do what it wants. And then you say, I can't do this. So this is why it needs practice, because it's a form of concentration. And so we need to concentrate on meaningful thoughts. So the input that I do in the different sessions is supposed to provide you with food for thought. And if there is something that you don't understand, it's useful, because then you can say, okay, let me think about this purposefully. And most likely you will understand, because understanding comes through mulling over some thoughts. And you get a very, very good feeling inside when you understand something that you didn't understand before. It's a very, very good feeling. The mind likes that. So there will be things in your life that are important, that need consideration, that sometimes you may worry over, which is not silent thinking. But if you have something that needs to be thought about, keep it there in your mind with this thought that my relationship with this concern is a friendly relationship. Because then you won't go into worry or uncertainty. And this time there are many worries and uncertainties that people have, insecurities that people have. When you feel a feeling of insecurity and uncertainty, which may well come up, take that feeling and allow it. It's right to be there, but come to it as a friend and relate with it as a friend, and see it not as an enemy but also a friend. And your working with something we call the power of transformation. As something comes to you, a feeling or a thought comes to you as something that is of concern, but you turn it to be something that is, okay, let's have a friendly relationship with this and discover the opportunity, the goodness that's in it, the wisdom that's in it. And so you're using your silent time actually very productively. So it's not about just not thinking or not talking, but you have time to think meaningfully over what should be thought about. When you're going in silence, there's a tendency to look for something to distract you. This is because a little bit impatience, a little bit anxiety. It's because there are deep down things which are troubling you, but which you don't know what they are. You don't know where it comes from. But it creates a disturbance, a silent disturbance in the silence. And then you try to find something else to do. It's similar to the idea of sitting with your pain. You sit with it, and you can literally ask it to come to the surface and reveal itself or present itself. These are different ways to bring things up. Some people, they do this by drawing, painting. And in your notebook, it's not just for writing, it's for anything that happens between a pen and a paper, which could be cartoons or symbols or... And when you have a feeling that you can't identify, you can sometimes see what color is it, what symbol is it, what does it want? Something like this, almost as if your deep inner world is someone. How many people are there inside your head? Must be quite a few. And will the real me present itself? They'll all say, I'm the real me, all of them. And they are. And our soul is multifaceted, very multifaceted, like a good diamond. To go into silence is also to discover aspects of the self that you may not know very well. Because always some part of ourselves is well developed and other parts less so. It's inevitable. But the underdeveloped parts say, my time now, give me space, give me time. And that may take the form of a disturbance in the silence that says, come, give me time, give me space, listen to me. So we must be a good listener to the self. Sometimes you will discover self-doubt. This is very common. And we do many things to cover self-doubt. If we find self-doubt, we also need to sit with it and write about it, or even write to it, so that we work through it silently, in the silence. So silence is work. And this is why I said earlier that it can be quite tiring. And sometimes when you're unearthing quite powerful energies and you get tired, then sleep. Sleeping in this time isn't necessarily avoiding, but it's acknowledging that you're shifting big energies, and when you sleep in such a time, it sort of allows them to come up. Because if you try and do something like this, in tiredness, it suppresses it. And if you sleep, it allows it a certain space to be present. In that case, it's good. Even you sleep 5 minutes, it's still good. When you're going into silence, it creates stresses and it allows stresses that are there to make themselves felt. And then you can realize that you are a lot more tired than you thought. And a little bit of sleep, even few minutes, will get you past that and then keep you fresh. Sometimes sit, sometimes walk. Even if it's raining, you can still walk in the rain. And just be. Make yourself the center of your universe. For many of you, family members or job or something may be the high priority. But in silence, all those things can be put aside. So I see you next week. Put yourself in the middle, the center of your universe, and let those things more fall away, so that your sense of self is not in relationship to those things, but just your sense of self as yourself. You're in the center of the universe and the planets are far out of the way for 2-3 days. So it's a gift for the self. I think it's also good to chart your journey. For some people it comes naturally, for some people not so comfortably, but it's quite interesting to chart your journey, to see where you're starting from, where you're going, to keep a record of how you're going, because that also gives you insight into how you process things and what you are for you. What do you mean to yourself? How do you feel about being the center of the universe, and all the other people from whom you take your identity? Disconnect from that, so that your sense of identity is coming just from who you are and what you are internally. Like I was saying, the soul is pure, peaceful, loving, powerful, light, immortal, independent of all these things that get tied around us. Separate yourself from them to feel the reality of yourself for a day or 2 or 3, and then reinsert yourself into your context. We have to be in a context, but we give ourselves time to just step out. And if you feel comfortable in the meditation, experiment with stepping out of your body, not literally, but in your mind. Your body is your instrument, and you are someone. You are not it. This body puts a limitation on our sense of self. The soul is genderless, but yet our sense of self is very gender-based. I am a woman or I am a man. But when you go deep inside and go step outside, you're a being, genderless, colorless, cultureless, languageless. These things come after, but as you go into silence, you're going closer to the essence of what it is to be. You feel your beingness. It can bring you to a point where you realize deeply that the very best thing of all is that I am me. It's so good when you arrive at that, you know. So maybe we will have a few moments together of practice of going into silence. It's an internal journey. When you go very, very deep in silence, it's good to have your eyes open. Because your eyes open means you're concentrated. Eyes closed, you lose concentration. And also, when you go very deep, if you have closed eyes, you may sleep without intending to, or you may get kind of lost. So it's an anchoring thing. And you can use this point of light as a place to rest your eyes while you go deep inside.